Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. As most of you guys know, I'm a writer, which means I like to be seen writing, which also means I don't write unless it's in a public space. So I end up using a lot of public networks like the Wi-Fi at Starbucks and whatnot. And if you don't know, using public Wi-Fi sometimes has its risk, like the theft of your personal information and all the good stuff that comes with hacking. So when I'm working in a public space, drinking my iced Americano and trying to finish a script in my latest rant, I make sure to use a VPN. And I do like using NordVPN because of all the technical stuff, like the double data encryption and the fact that NordVPN does not slow down your internet service. But I have to be honest, I also really like that when I connect to a different place, it like drags me across the country. I feel like I'm flying without flying. It's kind of great. If that sounds crack-a-lackin', go to nordvpn.com/Yara or use code Yara to get a 2-year plan plus a bonus gift with a huge discount. Your privacy will thank you, maybe. I don't think privacies can speak, but that's none of my business if they can. You already know what Cruel Intentions is. It's one of those movies so significant to pop culture that you know things about it even if you've never actually seen it. Like, you know the whole plot is kickstarted because two step-siblings want to fuck each other. Insert joke about Life with Derek here. You know it's Ryan Phillippe's most memorable role, not one of, the most memorable. You're gonna tell me you remember anything that happened in Antitrust? Cruel Intentions was the debaucherous, wildly hedonistic teen film that birthed sons like Elite and Euphoria. Sex, drugs, partying, or some monstrous hybrid of the three has always been a big part of almost all high school movies, but Cruel Intentions was one of the earliest examples that had a very dark atmosphere to it. I know what you're thinking. What about River's Edge? I said dark atmosphere, not bleak and depressing as fuck. For example, She's All That, also released in 1999, also includes a plot that starts off with a bet between teenagers, but the bet here is way more innocuous than what Sebastian and Catherine are getting up to.
When I get through with Cecile, she'll be the premier tramp of the New York area. And poor Quart's new little princess will be damaged goods.
Fucking hell, man. It's a story about horrible people being horrible.
We've done some pretty fucked up shit in our time.
You're not meant to empathize with them. You're merely invited to watch their evil from their perspective. These two manipulate friends and strangers, ruin the lives and reputations of the people around them without a second thought. There's no reason for either of them to feel remorse about their actions because all of it is a game. Their world is a playground and the people within it are merely toys. In 1782, Pierre Chaudeleur de Laclos, fuck you, my French sucks, published the novel that would become the basis for Cruel Intentions. Liaisons, which I'm going to just call Dangerous Liaisons, was a scandalous, biting, and frankly fucking hot book when it came out. It was controversial for the way it so blatantly explored sexuality and the actions of two morally bankrupt people. But it was also just too juicy to pass up on. Allegedly, Marie Antoinette had a copy of the book, which she encased in a blank cover so no one would know that she owned a copy. The initial response to this book, which was popular in spite of or because of its amoral plot, was identical to the response Cruel Intentions received when it was released in March of 1999. In fact, I'd say that Cruel Intentions is almost as impressive an adaptation of Dangerous Liaisons, the book, as Dangerous Liaisons, the movie, was in 1988. In this one, Cecile's music teacher is played by Keanu Reeves. Ooh la la. Ah oui oui. Cruel Intentions was also one of the earliest examples of, hey, let's take this piece of classic literature and put it in a high school setting. No, I'm not gonna count Valley Girl because it's Romeo and Juliet, and Romeo and Juliet are already teenagers. Nice try. It wouldn't be until after the widespread success of Clueless, a modern-day adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma, that the late 90s and each decade thereafter would be filled with teen movies based on classic literature. A couple of Pygmalions, an Othello, like 19 Cyrano de Bergeracs, and part of the popularity of these adaptations is all thanks to Clueless, She's All That, and Cruel Intentions. It turns out a high school setting can sometimes aid to a story. Who'd have thought? In this version, the youth of the lead characters makes the manipulation of Catherine and Sebastian more grotesque and makes the naivety of characters like Cecile, who was manipulated and hurt at multiple points in the film, even more tragic. Centering on this group of wealthy teenagers on the Upper East Side and focusing on the absence of their parents is an admirable choice as well. It calls back to that line in The Great Gatsby. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. Or wait, in this case, Catherine and Sebastian. They were careless people, Catherine and Sebastian. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. Speaking of, that's in the public domain now. Where's the Great Gatsby high school zombie movie, huh? I'm kidding, it'd make way more sense in college. I also appreciate the location of the Upper East Side apartment, as the decor calls back to 18th century French decor. Even if the story is set in a new world, a lot of effort went into keeping that world familiar to the original. It's just an impressive adaptation, even when the story doesn't always make sense. It's one of those movies that could have turned out really silly, and although it is not without its silly moments, or even straight up dumb moments, it's a risk that really paid off. No, it wasn't critically acclaimed, but since when do you need critical acclaim to be iconic? The popularity of Cruel Intentions was impressive. The story was not only well adapted into a teenage stratosphere, but young people were responding to it. Like its source material, Cruel Intentions was the dirty secret everyone loved. Scandalous and lecherous, and something you act like you'd never heard of when your parents asked you about it. In reality, people would have loved to see more of Cruel Intentions. More ice-cold Sarah Michelle Gellar, more gleefully fucked up plots. So I can't say Cruel Intentions 2, the 2000 movie, was unwanted. Cruel Intentions 2 is a sequel everyone asked for, but no one deserved. Cruel Intentions 2 is the movie prequel sequel to Cruel Intentions that's not really a sequel and not really a movie. But I'll get to that later. It stars Amy Adams as a slightly younger Catherine and Robin Dunn as a slightly younger Sebastian. People can change a lot in 2 years' time, I know. It was written by Roger Campbell, the same writer and director of the first one, so there's some regard here for the original. It focuses on how Sebastian and Catherine start living together after their parents marry and how their hate for each other mutates into this really parasitic bond. It's a good place to focus on for a prequel, in my opinion. One of the more intriguing aspects of Cruel Intentions is the relationship between Catherine and Sebastian. The movie starts and you're kind of like, how the hell did they get from A to Z? It's fascinating and weird, and Sarah and Ryan had enough tension between them that it worked in a very messed up way. In the prequel, we find out that Sebastian's father married Catherine's mother. Sebastian doesn't come from money, and trust me, they will spend the whole show convincing you of that, but Catherine does. Right away, that's kind of a problem, right? One of the first things Sebastian says to Catherine in the original is,
How is your gold-digging whore of a mother enjoying Bali?
Which I always thought meant Catherine was the one who was new to the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Apparently not. Sebastian joins the family and transfers to the private school Manchester Prep, where most of the episodes take place. Basically, Cruel Intentions 2 was very Gossip Girl, very elite, very... He shows up Catherine more than once upon his arrival to their New York mansion, and this is the beginning of us seeing what drives Catherine to be Catherine. Her mother.
So, he outdoes you at piano. He outdoes you at vocabulary. I guess I overestimated you. And don't sulk. It's a sign of weakness.
Yes, Mother.
And honestly, I hate to say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous, but this makes Catherine so much less interesting. The idea of her being this driven, pure for the sake of appearances, cutthroat person because that's the kind of person she is more fascinating than her manipulating her way to the top because she doesn't want to disappoint her mommy. Catherine interrupts Sebastian in the shower to threaten him and put him in his place.
Let's get something straight. I may not have fooled you, but I've got a great thing going with the rentals. I don't have a curfew, they never bother me about my homework, and I've got a 5-figure allowance. No one, and I mean no one, is about to threaten my cushy lifestyle. Especially not some 2-bit hip loser.
Come on, guys. I know this is cheating because these two actually did date, but Michael Cedar and Ashley Leggett had way more chemistry than this. Ashamed of Sebastian, she tells him to,
Now as for school, you stay out of my face and we'll get along just fine, but if you cross me once, I'll bear your sorry ass.
and to,
Do me a favor, pretend you don't know me.
which is hilarious because about 2 scenes later this happens.
Sebastian Valmont, sophomore, son of Edward and Corrine.
Go on.
I can't. He's a transfer student, and I don't have any more information on him yet.
Well, don't you know anything else about him? He is your stepbrother.
Nowhere in the middle did she tell anyone she got a new stepbrother. I thought they were pretending they didn't know each other, so what is this? Also, this line takes place in a scene where Catherine attends this secret society of rich kids at Manchester who have clandestine meetings where the sole objective is to...
Fellow students of affluence and popularity, I welcome you to this year's first meeting of the Manchester Tribunal. As your new leader, I promise to do my best to weed out the geeks, losers, and underprivileged. and toss their fat asses out of our school.
That's it. These rich kids are so bored they've created an entire secret society to focus on getting poor kids out of the school. It takes that sliver of barely there commentary and Cruel Intentions and makes it the cheesiest shit. The main plot in this one is not the secret society. It's actually, well, nothing. It has a lot of side plots and they're all pretty inconsequential. Catherine and Sebastian meet and they don't get along. Catherine feels pressured by her mother to be this perfect kid. Sebastian's father is cheating on Catherine's mom and Sebastian wants to stop it because he doesn't want to live on the street. There's also a new girl, Cherie, who is identical to Cecile, and Catherine hates her because Cherie's family makes more money than Catherine's family and because at the orientation she was choking on bubblegum and interrupted the speech or something.
Reach out and accept all new students.
Her revenge against Cherie is to make her lose her virginity and become, the school slut. Even though everyone at Manchester is supposed to be sexually active and most kids seem to wear that as a badge of honor, Cherie losing her virginity is supposed to make her an outcast somehow. This works in the book because of the time period, and it works in the movie because Catherine knows her ex would dismiss Cecile if she wasn't the virgin he built up in his head. But in the prequel, sequel, not movie, having Cherie lose her virginity isn't really going to affect her status, but I guess Annette couldn't have really gotten the car in the end either, huh? Sebastian likes the headmaster's daughter, Danielle, and he tries to win her over, and Catherine is manipulating the faculty and everyone else to give her special treatment. It's really all over the place, and no one thing is built up in a way that feels like anything is happening. Subplots are great, I love subplots, but this whole show is just a series of subplots. There's no central thing holding it all together, nor is there anything we're building up to. It's a story without stakes or intrigue, which is not very Dangerous Liaisons of you, is it? There's nothing super terrible about this movie. I mean, it's awful, but not the kind of awful that distinctively stands out. Where it gets really bad, though, is when we look at the characters because most of them are similar versions of what we'd seen in the movie, except the main characters, which blows my mind. Up until the end, Danielle is very much akin to Annette. Hell, she's even the headmaster's daughter. Cherie is basically Cecile, but not played by Selma Blair, so not as great. I mean, Carrie Lynn Pratt is absolutely doing her thing here, but it's hard to be as good as Selma as Cecile, which is why I don't understand why they basically wrote the same character, but gave her a new name. Sebastian and Catherine just happen to get super involved with the same kind of person twice. There's even a scene of Catherine teaching Cherie how to kiss, which is identical to the movie version, apart from the fact that Cherie is not actually kissing Catherine. So the same scenes, the same lines, but not nearly as interesting. So you have these characters who aren't the movie characters, but are basically the same. But then you have the two leads, Sebastian and Catherine, being the same characters, but like, not? Sebastian isn't a good guy in this prequel, sequel, not movie. It starts with him getting kicked out of his old school and putting a nude picture of the principal's wife in the school yearbook. How it got past the censors, I don't know. But how did Annette get this car in the end? Just go with it. This scene is a callback to the introduction of the movie where Sebastian manipulates his therapist into feeling bad for him and then she finds out what he did to her daughter. The fastest way to make a prequel more interesting is to just repeat a scene from the original. Everybody knows that. It's good that Sebastian isn't good, but as the movie goes on, his character starts to become more of a mystery. He's still a flawed person, but the storyline is actively trying to make him a good person, one who cares about people and feelings and not being a dick. Sure, he did this in the start, but he also cares about treating their personal chefs and maids like human beings.
You treat these people like dirt. It's no wonder they don't respect you.
We pay them for their service, not their respect. Maybe someday you'll learn that.
And one day you'll realize that they're human beings.
I guess that would be fine, but it ultimately makes him less interesting. It also undoes a lot for Sebastian in the movie, making him this good guy who turns into a manipulative, spoiled brat because of his stepsister makes his transformation in the movie less effective. What it suggests is that Sebastian was a good guy with flaws who tries to be a better person but then backslides to being a bad person who then redeems himself somewhat right before he dies. It's much more interesting to watch this kid be a morally bankrupt asshole. I mean, listen to him. He's literally such an annoying brat.
Boring, boring, boring. I love my parents. Boring, boring, boring.
I like it better when I'm on top.
And I get it. You want to put in little things that show you how much more human Sebastian is than Catherine.
We're destroying an innocent girl, you do realize that.
but it just comes off as kind of weak. For instance, when Catherine first proposes her plan to Sebastian to deflower Cecile in the movie, he says he can't do it. But his reasoning isn't that it's wrong, he doesn't care. The reason he doesn't want to do it is because it's too easy and he's bored.
I can't.
Why not?
Oh, come on, Catherine. It's too easy. Go get one of those moron friends of yours to do it. I have a reputation to uphold.
What does he get out of it? Cruel Intentions 2 has this push and pull where Sebastian isn't completely a bad person and he's trying to be better, but his stepsister overpowers him. As for Catherine, I like Amy Adams and all, but this Catherine is not the best, and she's kind of inconsistent too. For example, the secret society of rich people meeting, it's not in line for her character to be so openly cruel to people or to manipulate faculty or her parents. The ending to Cruel Intentions is so effective because no one knows Catherine is really this cruel, horrible person who keeps cocaine in her crucifix. Most people genuinely believe she's this angel. If they didn't, the entire student body wouldn't have looked at her like that when they read Sebastian's journal. If they didn't, it wouldn't have been so easy for her to convince Ronald that Sebastian was the real bad guy in all of this. For her to be so openly unkind, it kind of shifts the narrative. The power in Catherine's character isn't that she has this double life of sorts, but that she understands why she needs to have it. As a woman in the world, for her to be unkind or sexual or anything not a direct result of purity culture, she will be treated as trash.
God forbid I exude confidence and enjoy sex. Do you think I relish the fact that I have to act like Mary Sunshine 24/7 so I can be considered a lady? I'm the Marsha fucking Brady of the Upper East Side, and sometimes I want to kill myself.
Amy Adams' Catherine is very dismissive of everyone, and she especially hates the poor. The subtlety of this line is gold.
Hi, Danielle. How's the used bookstore?
There's also this moment that gave me a Cinderella story deja vu, even though this was way before a Cinderella story. It turns Catherine into much more of a cliched mean girl. It doesn't help that there's at least 3 scenes of her coming from around a corner and slow clapping like a cartoon villain.
Bravo.
Also, the villainy of this character is more irresponsible than the first Cruel Intentions, believe it or not. Whereas in the first film, Catherine's villainy lies in the fact that she is hurting and having others hurt an innocent girl who trusts her completely. The person she is hurting is actually being harmed. In Cruel Intentions 2, Cumble actually asks you to sympathize with a character who truly needs no sympathy. In this one, the way they choose to show that Catherine is a bad person is by having her blackmail a teacher who had sex with her over the summer. And they show it like she's such a bad person for manipulating this poor man, as if she isn't like 15 years old and he isn't a grown adult. The question that stands out most in this sequel, and what you usually wouldn't hear me ask, is, who is this for? It's based on a film that was made about teenagers, but was really mainly for adults. I mean, that damned R rating. And the show is grown, but it's also severely immature. You got bare-ass titties, but also silly sound effects.
All the travel. Do you mind if I turn in?
Not at all. I know you have a big day ahead of you tomorrow.
Eventually, Sebastian gets the better of Danielle and they start dating. As soon as they start going out, Catherine seduces Sebastian because she finds out what was in his file from his old school and blackmails him with it.
You know what they say about incest?
That it's disgusting? Oh, they don't say anything. We never find out exactly what went down at his old school, but it's bad enough, I guess, for him to do whatever Catherine wants by the end of it. Which is also strange because it's not like Sebastian's bad reputation is a secret. He doesn't give a damn about his bad reputation. In fact, his bad reputation is his pride and joy.
I have a reputation to uphold. Can you imagine what this will do for my reputation? Screwing the new headmaster's daughter before school starts. She'll be my greatest victory.
So the idea of Catherine being able to keep Sebastian under her thumb by threatening to blackmail him with what he did at his old school just doesn't make any sense, especially if he's just going to be bad anyway. Wouldn't he want his reputation you know what? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Anyway, because of the file, Catherine keeps talking about winning this game that I wasn't even aware they were playing. I rewatched it and rewound it and took notes, but nowhere in this movie does Catherine ever say they're playing anything at all until this scene comes and she's like, I win. Whatever game they're playing, she wins because it turns out Danielle isn't the person Sebastian thought she was, and she pretended for some reason, and now that he knows the truth, it means Catherine won. I don't really understand. It's almost like there's a bunch of plot points missing. I wonder how that can be. After spending most of the movie trying to get Cherie to lose her virginity, the movie ends with a scene that doesn't feel consensual or like anything I want to repeat. Then the credits roll. It ends with Sebastian being under Catherine's thumb, and that, the movie suggests, is the beginning of Cruel Intentions 1. There's no motives for anything they do here, which is perfectly fine. There's no real motive in the first movie either. I mean, there are motives, but everything that happens comes into play simply because these two rich kids who like toying with people are bored. That's it. But this movie is directionless in a way that kind of makes you go, well, I guess that was a movie. Or was it? Turns out there's a reason Cruel Intentions 2 doesn't make that much sense. There's a reason why it seems like there's too many plot points and most of them are going nowhere. There's a reason why it's weirdly immature and weirdly provocative at the same time. There's a reason why it looks so ashy, like a made-for-TV movie. Because it was made for TV. Manchester Prep was pitched as a TV show, a prequel to the events showcased in Cruel Intentions, and this show came about fast. Cruel Intentions, the film, debuted in March of '99. By September, Fox was broadcasting the pilot episode, so this show only took a few months to get started, and that also explains why suddenly it's Sebastian marrying into a rich family and not the other way around. When you rush your writing, you're bound to get some things wrong.
Gold-digging whore of a mother.
This is one of those things that calls back to MTV and Skins, that is, wrong show, wronger network. I'm not sure why Fox thought it would be a good idea for them to pick up a show based on a movie where jokes about anal sex and blowjobs were tame. I don't know if, despite the whole of Cruel Intentions being so steamy and controversial for its taboo subjects and casual sex, Fox just assumed the TV version would be a tame drama that they could air without facing backlash. Unsurprisingly, they faced a lot of backlash. It turns out having a scene where a girl masturbates on a saddle isn't wholesome TV for the whole family. Who'd have thought? When the show was canceled, before it could even broadcast, mind you, the crew took the first 3 episodes and cut them into a film, adding new scenes like this one to make it feel more like a movie, and more like the provocative movie they wanted. I don't know that this really helps the narrative inconsistencies, but who needs rewrites when you can throw in some tig-old biddies? It would be easy for anyone to look at this and say, oh, that's why it's so bad, because it wasn't meant to be a movie, but I think that's only part of it, because what it begins to boil down to is that Roger Campbell, the writer and director of Cruel Intentions, just isn't that good of a writer, and dare I say, he never has been. Even if we don't look at this production being rushed, there's still elements here that just don't make sense and character decisions that are full-on head-scratchers. There's even weak writing in 1999's Cruel Intentions, but this movie mostly works because, well, Dangerous Liaisons is just too damn good. All sequels to Cruel Intentions and all attempts to reboot or revisit its world have been met with little regard or interest, or quality for that matter. This is because Cruel Intentions is very much a product of its time. I mean, yeah, it's based on a book that came out in the 18th century, I get your point. What I mean is, Cruel Intentions, the modern retelling of Dangerous Liaisons, was already veering on being dated when it came out. Another reason I think it's been hard for Cruel Intentions sequels and prequels is because the original Cruel Intentions couldn't exist without Dangerous Liaisons. And I'm not even talking about the book when I say that. I mean, it literally couldn't exist without the book, but that's not what I meant. I'm talking about the 1988 Stephen Frears film, Dangerous Liaisons. Everything about Cruel Intentions echoes Dangerous Liaisons, right down to Ryan Phillippe's performance as Sebastian. He borrows a lot from John Malkovich, particularly with his movements and sometimes even the cadence of his speech.
No, I can't.
What?
Really, I can't.
Why not?
It's too easy. It is. She's seen nothing. She knows nothing. She's bound to be curious. She'd be on her back before he'd unwrap the first bunch of flowers. Any one of a dozen men could manage it. I have my reputation to think of.
Malkovich plays Valmont with this sort of boyish and, dare I say, petulant air, something that Phillippe would later play up to 11.
Sebastian!
Oh, fuck me. And Helen!
I'm not saying Ryan didn't bring his own thing to the role. I'm just saying in a movie where Sarah Michelle Gellar is bringing her own interpretation to Catherine and not just biting off of Glenn Close, in a movie where Selma Blair's Cecile is played so differently from Uma Thurman's Cecile, Ryan banking on John stands out as a weak spot. He's fine, but he's living in the house that John built, that's all I'm saying. And it's not as if Cruel Intentions is just a ripoff of Dangerous Liaisons. It's not as if Cruel is denying the influence the 1988 film had on his work. He makes plenty of homages to the first film, from casting Susie Kurtz to Catherine's corset in the beginning. These are shout-outs to Dangerous Liaisons. Trumbull knew and understood that his film was a reflection of this first proper adaptation of the Laclos novel, and he plays homage throughout the entire film. All art is inspired by other art after all. But what I'm saying is that Cruel Intentions is so much a reflection of Dangerous Liaisons that attempts to recreate it have been botched because those attempts can no longer stand on the shoulders of the Frears film. Left to his own devices, Trumbull couldn't make Catherine or Sebastian interesting to save his life. He needed Dangerous Liaisons, and that's totally fine. I once wrote the script that was entirely owed to the artistry of A Scanner Darkly, and even if I wanted to, I couldn't find a way to make that story my own or add to it because I couldn't imagine a version of that world better than what had already been laid out for me. Cruel Intentions worked because Dangerous Liaisons worked, but to a degree that renders any addition to that world arbitrary and silly. But this was an installment to a world that had already been so expertly crafted. Continuations are at best ineffective and at worst imprudent. Cruel Intentions, Dangerous Liaisons, Liaisons dangereuses, they're all about horrible people being horrible. The casual seduction throughout the novel seems a celebration of hedonism and libertinism, and that is how it's been read for centuries. But it's also very notable that Valmont and Mortoy are, by the end of the novel, paid severe comeuppance for the mess they made and for the people they hurt. By the end of it, Valmont is dead and Mortoy is disgraced. Their actions also hurt innocent people like Cecile, who becomes a pariah, and Madame Tervel, who dies of grief. Valmont and Mortoy are not the heroes. They just happen to be the main characters. Cruel Intentions is the same, although Cumble does make an attempt toward the end to make Sebastian sympathetic, but it doesn't work because you have to admit, we all want to see him dead. Deserved! But yeah, I don't really have a point in all of this. I guess the major point is to never, ever, watch Cruel Intentions 2, and to continue ignoring Cruel Intentions 3, and to leave Cruel Intentions 1 in 1999, and that stories about bad people aren't necessarily glamorizing being bad, which you'd think would be obvious, but I don't know, sometimes it's not. More importantly though, sometimes a good story is a good story, and other times it's just a great story dressed down.